The story of Marv, the protagonist, continues from the last encounter that he had with the dealer, a demonic, unhuman entity who battled many in a game of chance and killed many as the result, being the dealer of death. Keep in mind that Plunger Roulette is a fan game and doesn't canonically connect with the story of Buckshot Roulette. If you haven't watched the original video, you can do so by clicking on the link above or in the description. Despite acting as the definition of death, the Grim Reaper, someone no one can escape from, even at some point being hinted that God was even defeated as no one can escape and win over death, the protagonist, who I non-canonically named Marv, managed to beat the odds and defeat death, the dealer, and get away with a briefcase full of cash as a reward. In the case of dying to the dealer, we saw how in death he went to a place of light, eventually ascending, which in a way represented the afterlife, implying how the dealer was in fact the death, transporting the protagonist to the afterlife. Now, this time around, we get a flashback acting as a tutorial of the new game, facing someone called Gary Lukashenko. Gary is another entity who, just like the dealer, is unhuman and has a menacing look to him. The reward for finding him dead or alive is $3 million, portraying the level of threat that he poses. It's not clear what his crimes are and why the authority is desperately looking for him, but by the look of the key lights in this place, it appears as if he is also broadcasting the games on how he kills people in a game of chance. In this flashback, an event that happened before the events of Buckshot Roulette and before facing the dealer, Gary is surprised to see Marv again, welcoming him back. He goes over the rules of the game again and explains that he would throw in an award as always. But this time around, Gary seems to be playing the game differently, explaining how this will be their last game, as this time around one of them would die for sure. Keep in mind that he would have this dialogue in the updated version of the game, as when he is met for the first time the dialogue plays differently and he doesn't necessarily recognize the protagonist. It's not clear why he has chosen to play the game this way this time around, but maybe it's something to do with the pressure that he is under, being chased by the authorities who want him dead or alive. The game consists of a few levers which at random are connected to bombs on each party's side. Some levers are dots and are not connected, with the players having the ability to turn the levers on themselves or the opponent. If they manage to pull a blank lever on themselves, they manage to get a second go. Each party has a few lives and there are a few rounds. At the end of the game, one player will die. Gary seems to be someone playing this game over and over again and seemingly broadcasting it as he has the camera lights, hence how he is observed and known by the authorities. There are several items like before which helps each player in their game. The bandage gives back each player a life. Using the hammer to hit the lever deals double the damage on the lives. The beer allows the player to pull a lever with no risk. Handcuffs makes the opponent skip a turn, and the magnifying glass shows if a lever is connected to the bomb or not, helping the player to see which lever to pull. After managing to defeat Gary, the protagonist, having a briefcase full of cash, leaves the place, having killed him, planning to get into his unsuspecting old and rusty car to get away with so much money. Just as he's about to do so, he gets instructed by another entity having the uniform of a police officer to stop, pointing a gun at him, telling him how he knows about Gary all too well, someone who keeps on winning, killing many, getting so much money from it. The officer, instead of arresting the protagonist for taking part in this twisted game, gives him a strange proposition that they can play a game of chance as well, playing the Plunger Roulette game. His rules and reward for the protagonist are lackluster and unfair, as he explains if the protagonist wins, he will leave with his already earned cash, but if the officer wins, well, the protagonist dies with all of his money stolen. So in fact, he is not a law-abiding officer, and even if he is one, he is corrupt and a dirty cop. He even explains the reason he really wants to arrest the protagonist, or Gary, is because he keeps seeing Gary win and get large sums of cash, and it's something he wants to have, hence why he forces the protagonist into this game of chance. The officer is known as Officer Smiley, and he is a very strange person, having twitchy hands, with the protagonist unsure if he will shoot him or not due to his anxiousness. As they start playing the game, Officer Smiley's corruption is displayed further. How he destroys the protagonist's items, calling them contrabands, not playing fair at all. He at some point even mentioned someone by the name Bob, who seemingly died under his hands, someone he probably shot in cold blood. Managing to defeat the officer in a few rounds, all of a sudden he transforms into a deformed shape of himself, having a larger, more uncanny grin, talking to himself on how he is still an ordinary police officer and that disguises don't last forever. Trying to calm himself when he is twitching and shaking more severely, showing his psychotic and unpredictable tendencies. After a difficult battle, the protagonist finally manages to defeat Officer Smiley when he notices something around the back alley, a wanted poster for none other than this entity who goes by the name of Officer Smiley. The reward for his capture, whether dead or alive, being $4.5 million, shows what a greater threat and menace he was in comparison to Gary even. It seems as if he was a corrupt officer who vanished after being found out to have committed so many crimes with the authorities looking for him. Therefore, he doesn't seem to be a member of any police department, pretending to be one and forcing others to play his twisted games, including someone called Bob, whom he seemingly killed. That explains what he meant by saying disguises don't last forever, trying to encourage himself to act natural. That he in fact is wearing a disguise of still being a police officer, while in fact he isn't. It's not clear if he was actually a police officer before and eventually he was fired and hunted down for being corrupt and committing many crimes taking advantage of his authority, or if he is someone else completely, pretending to be an officer, with him being given a nickname of Officer Smiley, which doesn't necessarily bear any authority. Either way, he seems to be a bigger threat to the public than Gary, as Gary seems to be playing these roulette games with the ones who want to participate. But on the other hand, Officer Smiley is an unpredictable psychopath, nervous and dangerous, who forces members of the public, targeting them in the back alleys, to partake in his twisted games, whether they want to or not. It seems as if he specifically targets the people who take part in the roulette games though, as we see how he explains he knows Gary too well and he knows his games, following him everywhere and getting jealous of how good he is in the games, winning all the time and getting money. However, for the fake officer, he cheats and doesn't play fair, as many times destroying items which could even potentially help the players. Subsequently, however, after defeating Officer Smiley, it seems the protagonist is finally free to get in his car and drive off with the briefcase full of cash, which would be potentially enough for a long time until he is in need of more cash, taking part in the roulette games again. This brings us to the end of the video, folks. If you enjoyed it, make sure to stay tuned for more by hitting on the subscribe button and the notification bell. As always, it's been your host Star, and I will see you on the next one. Have a fantastic day.